We're on. Hello, welcome to the Dirt Show. I'm Just Big Lee.
I'm Paul.
And this is our Rallycross Update Dirt live show. And Mr. Robson's just sat there not loading the game. What are you doing? So, Paul, what have we got for people today in today's show?
Well, probably the biggest thing is Rallycross. It's a pretty cool sport. It's something we've had in dirt games in the past, but we've always kind of done our take on Rallycross. But we started talking to the FIA World Rallycross Championship back in, I guess it must have been 2012. They just started with their new promoters, IMG, and those guys came to talk to us about the potential of being included in the next dirt game. And we've just been kind of slowly building the relationship over the last few years, finding out the direction that they're going in, the circuits that they're going to be using, the format of the sport, what changes they're making to the rules, and just kind of slowly incorporating that into our plans. And this is kind of like the first step on what is hopefully a long and fruitful relationship with those guys. So yeah, we're starting off with 2 tracks, 3 cars, and then in the next update pack we'll have another new track and a couple more cars as well. 3 more cars. And yeah, so this is just our first step on the ladder towards representing FIA World Rallycross as a full license. But what we've been focusing on here is getting these cars handling as well as possible, getting you up against the computer to start with. So that's what this update's all about, getting used to the event format, getting used to heats, semi-finals and finals, taking the Joker lap and all that stuff. And then next update we're going to throw you in with all the other players in the world who are playing Dirt Rally, so you can actually go toe-to-toe with all the other guys out there.
Cool. Well, before we get started, guys, thank you very much for cheering us in. You can all go back to work now. Bye. 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 Just for everybody that's watching on the stream as well, we've got a swag pack to give away, as presented like so. It's a Rallycross baseball cap, pair of Logitech G35s, there's a Logitech mouse, some dirt stickers, notebook, we'll give you a copy of the game, t-shirt, there's a poster kicking around somewhere as well. All you need to do to be in for a chance to win one of those is just head over to our Twitter, which is twitter.com/dirtgame. And retweet the tweet that we put up at 3 o'clock today. It's the last one that went up, just announcing that the Dirt Show is live, and we'll pick one of the people that retweet that to win the amazing swag pack. I'm going to put this actually right. Okay, so we're doing Lyddon first. Yep. What I want to do to everybody that's in the chat box as it's working this week for us. So we've got the Ford Fiesta, the Polo. And we've also got the 2R8 WRX. Guys that are watching in the chat box, tap away and tell us which car that you want, and we'll go with that. So Lyddon Hill, why is that one of the tracks that we've decided to go with?
Well, I think we said this before with Wales. We're British developers, and we wanted to represent our home circuit. It's also where Rallycross began. The first Rallycross race ever took place there. So it made sense for us to have that as part of our opening offering, really. It's a lovely, simple track, but it's fast, it's flowing. So it teaches you the basics of Rallycross without too much technicality in the circuit. But I've got this sort of theory that some of the closest races you'll have online against other humans always happen on the simplest of tracks, because they're the easiest to learn. So it's all about getting those fractions of a second out of the car, and so you'll often get the closest racing occurring on those tracks. So I think Lyddon fits the bill there for its simplicity, but obviously it's got its history as well, which is fantastic to be able to represent that properly.
Cool. Looking at the chat box, everybody seems to be asking for Nittis' Fiesta. So which one?
It should be the first one of those 2.
Yep, go with that one.
Cool. So this is basically going to be the full event. So this is a custom event, but it's the full thing. So we've got your 4 qualifying heats, your semi-final, and then your final. The qualifying heats are 4 laps each. and your position in the heat and your time that you get over the course of the race is used to score points. And then the drivers with the most points go through into the first semi-final. Drivers with the next amount of points go into the other semi-final, and then the final is made up of the top 4 finishers in each of the semi-finals. So we've tried to represent the structure of real rallycross events as closely as possible. Joker laps are obviously integral to rallycross now, so we've got that in there. If you jump the start, if you really jump the start, you'll get disqualified, but if you just sort of fractionally jump the start, then you'll be asked to take 2 jokers. We do it live, we don't restage the grid, we just say you're taking 2 jokers, so you have to do it as part of that race. So yeah, all that stuff's been incorporated in, and it's something that we've really taken quite a few extra measures to make sure that we're representing the sport as closely as possible. So you can see here Mike has been on the left hand side of the grid for this first heat, so he's elected to go straight into the joker. That should give him some clear air, should allow him to gain some time on the guys that haven't jokered yet. So yeah, he should be in with a fairly good chance of passing them when they all go into the joker.
So for anybody that's kind of new to rallycross, what's a good strategy of knowing when to take your joker and when not to?
So a lot of it is based on road position and grid position. So Lyddon, it's a fairly obvious choice if you're on the left-hand side of the grid in a heat. Then generally you want to try and look to take the joker in the first lap. If you're on the right-hand side of the grid, which is where pole is, you want to try and cut to the inside and not take the joker on the first lap. What you'll see in the real-world events is that drivers who tend to get out in front stay out for as long as possible and then take the joker at the last minute. Drivers who get a worse start or a start that isn't really fitting for their performance, they'll often duck into the joker to try and get some clear air so that they're not getting caught up behind other drivers. So it's a tactical choice you have to make, and it's something that you often have to make on the fly. We've got a spotter in Dirt Rally who's actually Neil Cole, who's the guy that presents from inside the spotter tower on World RX, and he's brought some of his real world experience of what's being said in there to the mix. But what that basically means is he's giving you advice as to when you should be taking the joker. So he'll be telling you when your rivals are taking the joker, when it looks like they might be taking the joker, and it's kind of informing your decision on when you do it. But ultimately it's your choice. So if you don't take the joker, it's your choice not to take the joker. We're not going to force you into there, but you will get a penalty if you miss it.
Okay, caution, there's been an accident just up ahead.
So yeah, one of the other things to say about Lyddon is we've obviously amped it up a little bit. Lyddon's a fairly clubman circuit. Even when the FIA World Rallycross event is there, there's a lot of people there, but there's not a huge amount of fanfare and extra stuff going on. So we've actually built like a fairground kind of Ferris wheel and stuff up on the horizon just to add a bit more interest in there. But on the left you'll see the huge bank of spectators and all parked up in their cars, which is very, very true to the real life there. So I thought Mike was going to demonstrate some corner cutting for us there, but he actually managed to duck out of it for a minute.
To not cut the corner. So yeah, obviously it's quite an important thing, and it will be probably even more important going on to our PvP stuff later. But how are we handling the corner cutting in the races? In the rallycross races, that's different from what people will be used to with the rally? Yeah,
so the main way that we're doing it is to look at whether an advantage is being gained. So if you cut across a corner and you are doing that and gaining an advantage when you do so, then the first thing we do is bring up a message saying that there's a steward's inquiry, and then at the end of the race, if it's deemed that did gain you an advantage, we'll give you a time penalty, based on how severe the cut was. This is something that we're being relatively soft with for the PvE side of things. So when you're playing against the computer, we don't want to punish you too hard, but we also don't want you straight lining across the grass every race and just having no challenge. But then with PvP, we want to be really harsh on it. We're not going to do it so that it's overdone, but we want to make sure that players are adhering to the rules, because obviously in real life, if you're cutting corners, then the stewards will just take your result away from you, and you'll end up not getting any result from the weekend, which is why the real world drivers don't do it. So we want to sort of offer that same sort of punishment to a player. So if you're if you are cutting corners, if you're ramming other players, then we'll be dealing with that quite severely, because we want to police it as harshly as we can, because we know that if you don't, players take liberties.
Cool. So looking forward to getting ready for the rally for the PvP update later this month, sort of early next month. What kind of feedback are we looking for that will hopefully help us improve on that, so that we're ready? How can they get in touch with us and let us know sort of how they're feeling about things?
I think one of the main things is really like, how are you feeling about how the penalties are getting administered right now? If they're feeling too harsh already, then we might be in quite a good place. If they're not feeling harsh enough and people are saying, I feel like I should be punished more for some of the cuts that I'm taking, then we can look into that. But really, stuff like damage feedback as well is really useful to us. So we've got damage in obviously all of these races. Wear and tear should be fairly light, because we're obviously taking into consideration the fact that this is, although it's not meant to be a contact sport, contact does occur in rallycross, and you've only got a set period of time to repair the car in between the heats. So we want to make sure that that sense of attrition carries over through from heat to heat and into the semi-finals and finals, but we don't want it to be so harsh that you can't actually keep your car together over the course of a weekend. So all of that kind of stuff is really, really useful.
Repeat. Last lap.
So one of the I suppose one of the main things, we called it out in last week's road book, if anybody that's watching happened to read it. We've made kind of a bit of a decision on the AI, which we really need people's help with as well. Firstly, what is kind of the issue that we've had with the development on that, and how can we look to make it better with the feedback from people?
I think, so we thought the handling was in a pretty good place when we went out to Holgers. What was it, about 4 weeks ago now?
It seems like forever ago, but yeah.
We'd done a load of stuff to the rallycross cars that was very new to what we'd done to the rally cars, and that was based on the fact that our simulation team had gone out to speak to a number of the rallycross teams at the Liddon Hill rallycross event. And a lot of the information they brought back pointed us at some new ways that we should be doing stuff in our simulation. And what that meant was that we were able to not lean as heavily on the tyre, and the chassis was able to do a lot more of the work for making the car essentially have grip. But when we took the cars out to Holliers, we found that a number of the drivers were saying that there wasn't enough instant kind of turn-in. And we tracked that down to essentially being the fact that we hadn't given the tyres enough grip in this particular circumstance. We'd kind of pushed it too far in the other direction. So we got in touch with Cooper Tyres, who are the sole tyre manufacturer for World RX, and those guys gave us some really, really useful pointers as to how they go about constructing their rallycross tyre. As much of the data as we could get hold of in that short period of time as possible, and some of that stuff really kind of consolidated some of the stuff that we've been doing with our tyres already, and some stuff was a little bit eye-opening and gave us some pointers as to how we could tweak it. So as quickly as we could, we iterated the 3 cars that you currently see in this update with the new tyre. So they are leaning a bit more heavily on the tyre again, but with all of that extra chassis work that we've done previously. And it means that we've got the cars being a lot more dynamic. They're pitching and ducking and diving under acceleration and braking a lot more than they did do before. And there's a lot of grip there. But it's not that you can't brake traction. These are incredibly powerful cars, and if you light up those tyres, they will slide for fun. But it just feels a lot more correct. In terms of what you see on screen is a lot closer to what those cars are doing in real life. But when we make these changes, the way our system works, essentially it means that we have a lot of sort of knock-on effects that we then have to start looking into, and one of those things is the way that the AI are driving those cars. Now, when we took that build out to Sweden, we had AI driving around, and they were essentially being given a slight grip modifier to help them get around the track more efficiently. So they were essentially driving with a little bit more grip than the computer player had, the human player had. And what that meant was that they were essentially able to take corners more efficiently than the human was. Now what we've done here is we've taken that grip modifier away from the AI so that they're driving actually probably a little bit under what the human has. And what that means is that they're not able to drive as super fast as they were before, so they're not able to set those blistering times just yet. But it's because we normally take about 3 or 4 weeks to train the AI up to get them like all singing, all dancing, and having all the tricks up their sleeve that they need to give you a really strong race. So what we're hoping to do over the next few weeks on the lead up to the next update is essentially retrain them, get them running with this new tyre as efficiently as possible, but we'll also be looking at what the guys out there are doing, what times they're setting, what records they're putting up there, so that we can ensure that the top level AI are giving those guys as good a run for their money as possible, while ensuring that, you know, easy AI mode is still allowing those novice players to feel like they're able to get a good race in there.
Mr. Robson nearly won that, but then he made an awful mistake on the second to last corner. He's not going to catch him. He's not going to catch him.
He's having to keep it really clean as teammates, isn't it? So.
Right, okay, so I'll tell you what, we'll move on to a couple of questions. We had all these in from Twitter earlier. I'm not going to ask that one, rally cameraman.
Wait, is it the one about Domino's Pizza? Or
yeah,
is
he wants to know what's your favourite Domino's Pizza.
As a half Italian, I don't eat Domino's Pizza, so... It's a tricky one because...
Is it back on?
Yeah,
Yep.
So favourite rallycross car? It's a tricky one. I like the 208 probably because it's the most balanced car, but I think one of the coolest things about our rallycross cars is because we've had such insight from the engineers, we've been able to set each car up to feel quite individual, and a lot of that comes from the differential setups that the cars have. For example, the 208 doesn't run a centre diff, it's much closer to what you get in the WRC cars. And so as a result, it's a lot more predictable when you drive it, whereas when you're driving something like the Fiesta, the diffs are loading up and unlocking and loading up and unlocking, and that actually makes them more efficient at times. And if you know how to control the diff well, then you can get more out of it perhaps, but then the car can be less predictable at times. So it's really up to you guys to go out there and try all of the cars and see which one suits your driving style the best, but then don't be scared of tweaking some of those setups, because you know, by loosening and stiffening the diffs, you'll actually start being able to get these cars to cross over a little bit compared to some of their rivals. Although obviously the Peugeot doesn't have that centre diff, so you won't be able to do anything to adjust that centre feeling. But yeah, I think the 208 is probably the nicest car to drive at the moment in terms of just pickup and playability. Very predictable car, and I do like it.
Master Von Blaster has asked, what's the #1 lesson from our trip in Holgis?
If a hunter ever invites you into their cabin, always say yes.
Okay, that's a story for another time. No, I mean, we did have, it was great, like, so I don't think we'd been set up all of 3 minutes, and we took the case off the top of the simulator seat, which Ramona very kindly lent to us because ours got stuck in Operation Stack in Ferry Strike. So thank you very much, Ramona, if you're watching. Hello, Ramona fans. I mean, it hadn't been out of the box 5 minutes. We couldn't even get it on before we had a crowd sort of around it. Peter Solberg's son Ollie came down and he was playing it straight away. And then the next thing we knew, like, it was almost like all of the drivers from the paddock were there, sort of having a go and playing it for the Thursday and the Friday. So obviously you spent a lot of time talking to them, and it kind of leads on to a little bit as to the reason why we took the decision to delay the pack a little bit. So what was it that we learned from those guys from what the game was a month ago? Yeah. And how have we made the game better because of what they said?
So when you get information from engineers and use that, it's obviously grounded very closely on the engineering that they're using to make these cars as efficient as possible. But it's kind of the engineers' side of the story. when you sit a driver down in front of the game and get them to play the car that they drive every day, they come back and give you more information about the feeling. And I think the feeling is something that's been called out in a lot of our reviews, and a lot of the user reviews on Steam talk about Dirt Rally having the feeling. And it's something that, as a game designer on this, I didn't feel like the build that we took out to Sweden had that feeling yet. You could drive those cars quickly, but you had to really, really sort of think around the problem rather than just being able to jump in and be fast, with a lot of confidence in the way that the car was behaving. So I think getting this kind of constant and fairly solid stream of feedback from everyone who played it, basically talking about there not being as much confidence in the car, the grip not quite being right, then essentially not being enough grip from the tyre where they were expecting there to be much more grip. It kind of gave us this kind of big voice of, we need to look into this and really rework the way that it's all been put together. And I think that's something that happens when you have kind of new tech. You really focus on the new tech, and you maybe leave some of the stuff that you've used in the past behind. And what that feedback essentially gave us the courage to do was to say, you know what, maybe our tyres were pretty good before, and we were right to be leaning on them, perhaps not as much as we had done, but we shouldn't have just left them as being a low grip entity, and let the chassis do all the work. So having all the drivers give us that feedback gave us the confidence to come back in the studio and get that addressed. And obviously it did take a little bit more time, and as with all of these things, we'd want more time, which is why the AI aren't quite up to spec yet. But you know, I'm glad we did what we did. I think that, as always in games development, there's always that tipping point where you make the decision as to whether to actually carry on and go ahead with something, or whether what you've got is enough, and you just go with that. And I think one of the overriding themes for Dirt Rally is that we've always taken that step to do more with it, rather than just sticking to our guns and accepting that what we had was okay. We always try and strive for that next level, and that's really rung true with this. And I think the results that we're already seeing, I've checked out our forums just before coming online, there's a few people playing it already, they're noticing that the tarmac tyre is very different in Rallycross, and that's really encouraging, because it is essentially a tarmac tyre that is designed to cope with going off-road as well, but it's predominantly a tarmac tyre. And the stuff that we're learning with this, you know, will hopefully all feed back into what we've done with our rally cars and what we continue to do with our rally cars moving forwards.
Cool. I haven't been paying attention. Are we on the semi-final or the final?
We are currently in the semis, I think, based on 6 laps.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So just sort of going back to the game a little bit. So on screen, obviously, there's a couple of new little things on the UI that we've added. Obviously, there's a rear view mirror in there now, and the little Joker lap icon. There's something else that we kind of needed to point out for people that are going to be using the rear view mirror. So what is it the sort of the tweak that people will have noticed with that, and how are we looking to make that a little bit better?
Yeah, so it was a bit of an 11th hour thing last week. We wanted to run with the rear view mirror in all cameras by default, because it's integral to Rallycross, and it was really important for players to be able to see where their opponents are. But when we've been doing our performance testing and looking at how things are performing, we noticed that the rear view mirror was having a fairly significant effect on performance, especially in those sort of low mid-end PCs. So we took the decision to turn the mirror off by default. So that means if you just load into the game, the mirror won't be there. But if you've got a reasonable PC, definitely give it a go, because it does help out so much to be able to see what your opponents are doing in the rear view mirror, whether you can catch a glimpse of guys going into the Joker lap before the spotter will call it, before even the OSD marks it as happening. Because the way we look at the Joker lap is as an entry point and an exit point. So you won't know that one of your rivals has taken the Joker until they've actually completed the Joker. but when you look in your rearview mirror, you can see them going off into the Joker early on, so you get that sort of little bit of advanced warning on stuff. So yeah, this is the final.
No pressure.
The car behind is taking the Joker now.
He's not phased. He's not phased,
Not
by
phased
pressure
at all.
Okay, so something else which I don't want to say it caught us out, but maybe we was a little bit surprised with it earlier in the year. There was the jump coming out of the exit on the Joker. How quick and easy a change was that to sort of get in, and
Okay.
how did we go about making that? Because it was just initially we were just sort of flat there, so it was a bit of work to get it changed in time.
Yeah, so the Liddon Hill that we made was based on our research trip back in 2013, I think it was. Maybe even earlier, maybe even 2012. And obviously the exit of the Joker lap never had the jump there. And then we were watching that final episode of Top Gear and noticed a few cars jumping out of the Joker, and we were like, have they just put that in for the Top Gear show? So we kind of held on to it for a little bit more, and then we saw that the guys were using it as part of the World Rallycross round this year. So
There's been an accident.
essentially that weekend we started asking World RX for some pictures of the jump, started studying all the onboard as closely as possible, and then went to work with it. We had some polish time left on the track, so we were able to sort of incorporate it into that. So it means that essentially the track that we're running here is as close to the 2015 variant of Liddon as possible, which is great because it means that, you know, this is true to this year's event, which didn't happen that long ago. So luckily with things like that jump, they're not huge changes, but as a result of it, we did have to move some of the barriers around a little bit, so the exit of the Joker was a little bit more favourable going over the jump, because if we just left the barrier placement and stuck the jump in, it would have been too narrow, so you'd have been trying to post the car through a gap that's about a car and a half's width, which isn't conducive to going side by side into the Joker. So yeah, something that you may have noticed on the entry to the first corner is the Supercharge Award. So in Rallycross, for the final, going into the first corner first gets a driver the Supercharge Award. So when we were out in Sweden, Andreas Backerud, he got the Supercharge Award there for being first into the first corner. So we've denoted where that marker is based on the real world positioning of that award.
So we've got an achievement for that in the game as well, haven't we?
Yeah, so rather than doing it on every race, if you can get into the first corner first in a final, we'll pop an achievement for you. So that's the way we decided to do it.
Joker on the last lap.
So what sort of tips would you have for somebody who's getting used to playing Liddon? Because it does look like it's quite an easy track, but especially this corner here, I'm normally in the tyre wall. And the corner at the bottom of the hill, I'm normally off in the gravel there as well. So it's, I don't think that it's deceptive. It's just there's an art to driving Liddon, definitely. So what sort of tips have you got for people coming into some of the corners if we commentate one of these last laps that's coming up?
Yeah. Okay. So going into this dirt section off the start, some of the top drivers like Petter will always try and get a couple of wheels onto that tarmac strip up the inside, because that gives them a little bit of pull from the front wheels to get them around that corner. As an overarching rule, braking points are vital in Liddon, so you need to try and pick a spot that's on the side of the track, as you would with any racetrack, and use that as your braking point, and then either brake earlier or later based on how you're performing and how much wear and tear the car has got. Generally try and clip the apex as tightly as possible, although a number of these barriers will snag you. And on that final corner there, that chicane that you go through before the finish line, try and avoid that inside curb. So the curb on the left-hand side is a very severe curb. I think Mike clipped it in one of the races earlier. It will destroy your front suspension, and it will quite easily flip the car up into the air. We've had it on good authority from Liam Duran that is what that curb is like.
Wow.
And so, you know, there was a lot of discussion about whether we should soften it off and make it a more traditional racing curb. But when you're making these real world circuits, you've got to keep you've got to keep the character and those sort of key features in there. And so we decided to stick with it and make sure that is as severe as it is in real life.
So that corner there at the top of the hill, that's the one that I struggle with. What advice have you got for that?
You want to be trying to break down into second gear, I think, is probably your best bet. Try and get the car turned in. If it's not turning in, nip the handbrake a little bit, and that'll help get the back end out. Once you're in, it's much easier to power slide on your way out of the corner. So, slow in, fast out is a bit of racing terminology, a bit of a cliche, but ultimately with rallycross cars, once you've got the car pointing roughly in the right direction, it's much easier to modulate the throttle and then power through the gears to pull you out of the corner than it is to try and save it from going in too fast on the way in. But the beauty of rallycross cars is that you can take a corner with a variety of different lines. We've seen a number of the drivers come from different race disciplines. So you've got Petter from his rally heritage, although he did originally start in rallycross. You've got Timmy Hansen, who came from a karting background and more single-seater based sport. And these guys are all racing together, and they've all got their various styles and techniques, but they're all going pretty much the same speed around the track, but they've all set up their cars slightly differently, and they're all driving the cars slightly differently. So if you're from a grip driving background, then you may want to try and find the setup that suits that kind of driving more. If you love your rally and you love going sideways, then you can soften up the suspension and chuck the car around a lot more and dance it around the corners a lot better.
Cool. We'll head on to the next event now. So we'll do a round in Sweden. The second most popular car requested was the Polo. So rather than ask again, everybody was asking for the Polo, so we'll go with that one. Just before we get on to that, for everybody that's just tuned into the stream, hello, I'm Lee, this is Paul. If you head over to our Twitter page, which is twitter.com/dirtgame, there's a tweet on there that went up about half an hour ago, which was a link to the live stream. If you retweet that, what we're going to be doing is giving away our glorious swag pack, which Paul will demonstrate now. We have a Rallycross hat, a set of Logitech G35 gaming headphones, there's a gaming mouse, and some Dirt Rally stickers, t-shirt, notebook, copy of the game. There's a poster somewhere as well.
It's not back there.
I think that's pretty much the whole of the prize. So yeah, we'll be giving that away, and we'll pick a winner. We'll announce that on Twitter shortly after the live stream's finished. Go back to some community questions. So this one came in from Twitter earlier from Bojan. He wants to know what made you guys want to do a more realistic simulator game.
So I think it sort of started from actually sitting in a car and doing it for real and realising that there was a number of things that we spent our money on in the past or spent our resource on in the past that weren't really true to the sport in terms of they weren't what was most important when you were actually in the car. So that sort of set us on that road of discovery a little bit. And then it came from like trying to run our less simulation car handling down more realistic roads, and we found that it just made the experience unpleasant. So to get the cars being able to dance around and get around some of these tighter, more technical stages, we took the decision to essentially make the car more realistic in the way that it behaved so that it could cope with those challenges. What we found now with rallycross, where the tracks are a reasonable width, yes, there's technicality, especially here in a track like Holgers, but there is more track width. We found that by having a more simulation engine underneath, actually it makes that track racing experience even more exhilarating than it ever has been before, because the way the car's moving around underneath you, the way that you have to pick your braking point, catch a car that's going out of control because you braked a bit too heavily or you've had too much input in when you're braking for a corner, has made these tracks come alive. We handled in a white box form when we had our previous handling engine, and it was good fun to slide around, and it felt very close to where we were with the sort of Dirt 3 handling setup. But now when you're driving around it with the more simulation-based cars, that enjoyment is still very much there, but the technicality and the challenge has just been amped up, and you really feel like you're earning every corner apex that you're clipping, and I think that's, it's really validated that decision.
Is it weird that I'm having flashbacks to Sweden? No, I haven't seen the track for a while. But yeah, I mean, it is an awesome track, and it's certainly one of the best motorsports events I've been to. I think for me personally, it tops Silverstone for the F1,
right?
For the atmosphere and everything that's there. It was a really good weekend out there.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that they call it the Magic Weekend out in Sweden. I think it's fair to say that it's a motorsport party.
Yeah.
It's the first day of the sort of national holidays out in Sweden. Everybody kind of is just starting to let their hair down, and that it definitely feels more than a rally or more than just a motorsport event. I think you even going to Lydden Hill, which is on a bank holiday, so it's a public holiday in the UK. It's not that kind of festival feel that you get in Holges. And obviously the fact that it's never really getting dark either. There's always like this twilight feel to the atmosphere. It was something else about the whole thing. But yeah, cramming 40,000 people into a village which normally has a population of I think 120 will probably do that. So yeah.
Oh, what have you done?
Managed to roll it.
Oh, well done.
So yeah, that is one of the things with the new tyre actually, because when you hit one of these high curbs and Holges quite hard, and you keep the lock on and you turn into the corner, as with real life, if the car starts to go over and you turn into that, it will roll the car over. You can counter steer it though and get out of that situation, but it's something that can happen, and you see it in real life. That these guys, when they hit these curbs too hard, the car can go over. So it's one of those things that you have to look out for, especially in Holges, because of the way that the undulation is occurring, and the fact that the car's always being thrown off camber as you go over some of these crests.
Yeah, I mean it was something that happened when we were at Audi there. The Audi team sort of had a similar incident.
It was quite a bad one actually.
It's pretty scary.
Obviously he was up on two wheels, so you don't have the grip to brake, and he just got pitched straight up into a wall. Although in that particular circumstance, that was because he rode up the wheel of the Mini. So it was kind of like an incident you'd see in an open wheel race series where the tyres connected, but because they've got such flimsy kind of fiberglass composite panels, it just chewed straight through the fiberglass, and the tyre hit tyre and just pitched the car off into the barrier.
Okay, next question is from, don't know how to say this guy's name, D1MG30.
Is that one of the droids in Star Wars?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. It's out this Christmas. So far we've seen the 208 WRX, Fiesta ST and the Polo. Do you plan to include any other cars in the future?
Yes, we do. So obviously the big missing car at the minute is the DS3, or as it's now known, the DS Automobile DS3.
Okay.
As Citroën have now sort of split the brands, so DS3 is their new luxury mark. So yeah, Petter's car, Liam's car will both be coming in the next update. Actually, we're really glad that we're not glad, we would have loved obviously for that car to be in this pack, but the extra time that we've got from not being able to get it into this pack has meant that we've been able to really dial in the setup on Petter's car. If you speak to anyone in the rallycross paddock, there's a lot of people scratching their heads as to how the setup that Petter has is even possible as a thing, and then how he can drive it that fast is just like another conundrum on top of that. You see the amount of dynamism on the chassis as he brakes for a corner and as he pitches the car in. But we believe we've been able to get really, really close to that. And Petter was actually one of the guys that gave us probably the most in-depth feedback, and I actually sat with him and we tried to dial in some of the setup that the car had available to it in the settings options, and we did get it close to what he wanted, but again, that pointed quite clearly to the fact that we needed to go beyond just car setup within
the game.
Yeah, within the constraints of in the game, and actually take it to the simulation team and see what they could do. But yeah, Petter's car is it's a handful. You have to have a lot of skill to drive it, but when you've got that kind of skill in place, you'll be able to maximise with it. And it is a different driving style, but Petter's is a different driving style. But it means that it's a very rewarding thing once you get your head around it. But yeah, one of the coolest things actually was Petter telling me that he used to sit in hotel rooms with Colin McRae and playing some of the early alpha and beta builds of Colin McRae Rally.
Oh, right.
And they used to sort of get feedback together between them and send that back to the studio for the early Colin McRae games. So it's kind of cool to kind of close that circle and have him giving us feedback for this now.
We'll have to try and dig out some of those notes.
Puncture on your
Yeah, God only knows where they are now.
They'd have been faxed over back then.
Yeah.
Posted.
But I mean, a lot of people just think that Colin just put his name on the game and that was it. But he had sign off at every milestone on the project, and if he wasn't happy with it, then the game wouldn't get released. So yeah.
Okay, so next question. This is probably looking forward to our next update, the PvP update. So Danny on Twitter has asked, simple, any news about the multiplayers?
The multiplayers are coming along nicely. What we are working on at the minute is making sure that all of the heat structures work as well as possible. So for multiplayer, what we're doing is we're basically putting players into a lobby of 8,
on your right.
and then they can basically do 2 races of 4 versus 4, and then they can get
What have you done? Did you just spin it on the first corner?
Got a punch on the bit.
can't take him anyway. Yeah, so we're just making sure that crossover between the two races within the lobby works as smoothly as possible, and it's just general netcode stuff. But yeah, it's really getting into those final stages now and just stress testing as much as possible. I'm not sure if it's official yet and whether we should be talking about it.
Do it.
Yeah,
Do it, they'll love
Let's
it.
do it. Okay. So we are looking at doing some closed beta stuff for a select few, and then if that goes well, we'll roll it out a little bit further. Obviously, it's a bit weird because we're in early access already, so technically you could describe this whole thing as a beta.
This is an earlier access.
But this is like an early beta access PvP focus test thing. So yeah, if you've got plenty of time to commit to being able to give us as much feedback as possible about how the netcode is holding up and how robust our multiplayer sessions are, then get in touch and we'll try and hook you up with a key. And then, hopefully by the time the next update's ready, we're in a pretty good place. But obviously the more feedback we can get early on, the better.
Yep.
And the more chance we have to react to it. And then if there's anything fundamentally wrong, then we may have to look at knocking this pack back, but I really hope it's not the case. I hope that we can get as much as we need out of these little beta tests.
Cool. So I mean, I'll be in contact with a couple of our dirty gossipers to sort of get that initial group of people in, just to make sure that us sending out the codes and everything's working fine. But then maybe as this week goes on, and perhaps towards the end of next week, what I'll do is I'll set up a thread over on the Steam forums where people can jot their name down, and I'll try and be in touch with anybody that wants to help us build out our multiplayer experience sort of going forward.
What I will say is that we may need you to play at certain times so that we can make sure that we're getting as much out of the test as possible, because it's kind of all very nice and fine just going wide with a beta test, but if you all just get the key and then nobody's online at the same time, then we can't really get as much info out of them as we would want. So
Set up some proper,
yeah,
some play dates.
yeah, some play dates, and we'll be getting involved as well. So I'll be playing from home. So yeah, it's something that we're lining up for the next month anyway.
Cool. Next question is from Love Christensen. Will there be league support for Rallycross?
Absolutely, yep. So we've got league support in from this update. So you'll be able to race Rallycross with your friends in a league format, and then obviously we will try and get that incorporated into the PvP side of things as well. So you'll be able to do more multiplayer-based league stuff in the next update.
Cool.
Mr. Robson has just demonstrated getting disqualified at the start.
He just jumped the start.
Got some
So yeah, sort of on that, I suppose. What just occurred to Mr. Robson?
So he didn't even hold the handbrake off the start and just jumped right off the get-go. And in that situation, we will disqualify you because you could be halfway around the first lap before the other guys launch off the line. If you jump the start within the last, second, just before the green light goes, then we'll give you the double joker penalty, which is based on what they do in real life. Although in real life they restage the start and just tell that driver who jumped the start the first time that they've got to take 2 joker laps. But yeah, I mean, so rather than doing the whole restaging of the start stuff, we've looked at it as we can do this sort of on the fly penalty. But yeah, like a full jump start will get you disqualified.
So that's only really for players that are playing with manual launch control turned on.
Yeah.
So if manual launch control's off, which is by default, I believe.
It's going to carry over whatever
Yeah.
setting you already have in the game. But if you're launching the game from fresh, if you just pick this up because you're interested in Rallycross and this is why you picked up Dirt Rally, then I believe it's on by default, as in the automatic version of it is on by default. But don't quote me on that, it's been so long.
That's that one. Manjula has asked, did you get all the geometry needed to model cars, or did you just build them according to real life photos? So I think he's asking how closely did we work with the manufacturers on that one, and the teams, more importantly.
It's one of those things where with Rallycross, actually we got way more info because of our partnership with World RX. But yeah, obviously some of the cars that we have earlier on in Dirt Rally are only really referenced by photos because they didn't use CAD to make a Mini
Mark II.
Cooper.
Yeah.
So it's kind of on a per car basis, but the more modern the car is, the more likely it will have CAD. But then that then goes to how our relationship is with the teams and the manufacturers as to whether they're willing to expose that to us. So sometimes we have to take CAD from a road car and modify it based on pictures of the race car. Sometimes our guys have to go ground up from pictures. Other times we'll get scan data. So it's really just, we take whatever we can get and compile that to make the most accurate rendition of the model we can. And the guys in our car art team and over in our overseas department in Kuala Lumpur do a fantastic job of getting these cars looking as accurate as possible. And with the Rallycross cars, they've really embraced just how beaten up these cars are, even when they're in their most pristine state. These cars have panel gaps and they're all made up of composite materials. So there's a lot of like gaps and wobbles and stuff that you wouldn't see in a showroom spec car. One of the other things that we've actually worked on with the Rallycross cars is we've refined the damage so that...
Did you bum out?
Was that it? I just pressed continue.
You got kicked out, you didn't make the final.
So if we just take this opportunity to actually go and look at some of the shorter routes, I think it's probably one of the best things we can do now. So within our Rallycross circuits, obviously in real life you've got the main Rallycross route at Lyden and at Holgers, but for some of the earlier stages in the championships we wanted to get some clubman and junior routes in there, just to give players like a different variety really as they work their way through the Rallycross championships. So yeah, we've taken some of the infield roads that are in Holgers and Lyddon and used them to make some smaller, tighter little circuit routes in there. So they're not what you'll see the professional guys racing around, but we've taken a bit of a liberty with it. But it has mixed up the variety a little bit, which has been cool.
Go to 208. We've not done that one yet. So obviously we're launching this from custom event. So in custom event, you can. What sort of options have you got? You can obviously just, with regards to how you set your weekend up.
Yeah, so you can choose whether you do a full weekend, which does heats and semi-finals and finals. Then you can do semi-finals and finals only, and then you can do final only, which is just the one race essentially. And then you can choose how many laps you have in your heats, how many laps you have in your semi-finals, and how many laps you have in your final. So you can do shorter events than happens in real life, and you can do way longer events with like 10 laps in all the heats and in all the finals if that's what you want to do.
So there's plenty of options there for people to customise how they want to play the game.
Yeah, very much so.
Let's go back to some questions. I did have one I was going to ask. This is from our favourite crazy Swedish streamer. He's asked which car in RX do you think will be the most popular, and which one do you think will reap the most wins?
That's a very good question. I think at this stage, it's a hard one to call, although I suspect it may be the Ford Fiesta because there's some massive fan bases for Nittis and for Baccarid. So I think those, if you're a fan of those guys, then you'll jump in the Fiesta straight off the bat. I think once Petter's car comes in the next update, I think that may become a fan favourite. So yeah, it's a tricky one to call really, but what I would encourage everyone to do is to try them all out because they are very different cars. It's very easy, and it's a mistake that I made when I first started looking at the rallycross cars with the simulation guys. I was like, they're all the same really. They're all little European hatchbacks, four-wheel drive, 600 horsepower there or thereabouts with differentials and stuff. They're all pretty much the same car, so it's going to be an easy job for you guys. Then they went off and spoke to the engineers and found out just how much difference there is in both the setup and the methodologies even used by the engineering teams, and then the styles of the drivers and what the driver actually wanted from the car. That actually means that these cars probably have more variety than a lot of the cars in some of our rally classes, which you look at and go, these are distinctly different cars just by where the engine's placed and what drive they have. So yeah, the technology that's gone into these cars and the understanding that we've gained from speaking to the engineers and the teams has really helped us make these cars feel quite dramatically different. I know that may sound like salesman pitch, but really get in these cars and try them out, and you'll really spot they've got their subtle and less subtle kind of nuances that you should be playing around with.
Cool. So we're coming up to. You did semis in the final on this one, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
Okay.
so.
Cool. Right. Ignore me on that then. I was going. Okay. So next question is from Masiek. Sorry if I've said that wrong. What was the reason behind wanting to add rallycross into Dirt Rally?
So we've always had rallycross since Dirt 1. And in Dirt 1 it was like real rallycross circuits, and we had some real rallycross cars in there, and then from that point onwards we always kind of did a fictionalised take on rallycross. But while we were doing that, we then started to get championships like the British Rallycross Championship coming up to us and asking what they needed to do to their championship to make it more like what the kids were playing in the game. And then we've kind of gone with Dirt Rally and looked at things from a much more professional standpoint and tried to represent the sports more authentically. So it's kind of come full circle. We've got a sport that over the last few years has been getting more and more and has been growing and has been getting more exciting and is definitely turning a lot of heads. And World RX is the fastest growing motorsport without a shadow of a doubt. Drivers who were going to go into rally, who were going to go into other motorsports disciplines, or who have been in DTM or in Formula One have been migrating into rallycross because it's definitely got that wow factor. And you know, Dirt Rally, although the name Dirt Rally suggests that it was going to be entirely focused on rally, it was really always meant to be focused on the stuff that we knew our players loved to play in our previous titles. And if you look at what people played in any of our previous dirt games, it was the rallycross and the hill climb, or the trailblazer as we used to call it. So rallycross was always going to be a part of that. But knowing that the World RX guys are so passionate about the sport that they're helping to build, and knowing that their kind of passion and their kind of ambition very much fits with what we've been trying to do with Dirt Rally. It was just such an obvious and natural fit for us to bring it in. And I think it's absolutely important for a game like Dirt Rally, which, you know, to begin with, we really did focus on what it was like to be you and your co-driver driving through the forest, and that was where the challenge was at, to actually remind people that a lot of motorsport takes place on track with other drivers, and you're racing for track position and to win in that much more kind of closed environment. And but to say that there are cars that drive in quite a similar way to how rally cars drive, but do the sort of door-to-door contact racing, and so yeah, I think it's a natural fit. So the decision was kind of always there, and I think the key thing is this time we've just decided to do it right and authentically as possible.
What we'll do is after this race, we'll run one more event. We're going to run a final. So if you guys watching it on the Twitch stream, if you let us know what car and whether you want us to do Liddon or Holgis, we'll run that as our last race. So that one's up for community vote. So tap away in the chat box, let us know which car and which track you want us to see run a final on before we get off today. Looking past, I suppose, the next update, the PvP update, are we about halfway through now? Halfway through-ish?
I think today marks the halfway point if you're going literally on updates. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay, cool. So looking beyond the PvP update, how will, I suppose, the Rallycross content that we're putting out this month and sort of next month, how will that influence the rest of the game? What kind of things will change in the same way that like Pikes Peak sort of influenced some of the other stuff going forwards as well?
I think the key thing to say on that is that the influence has not actually been seen in-game directly yet, but it has given us like a much clearer game plan as to how we can improve various areas of the game, and that is echoing a lot of the feedback that we're getting from players on the way that the cars are driving, and so there's a number of stuff that we know that players aren't happy with, and we know that the majority of guys are delighted with how Dirt Rally has kind of come about and how the cars drive in it. But we know that there's a bunch of stuff out sort of in the way that the cars are driving that we can improve, and that's become more and more apparent the more work we've done on introducing these new disciplines. So yeah, we're looking at doing a pass on all the cars that have already been in Dirt Rally, and I'm not going to make any promises as to when that will come through, but what I do hope it will do is to offer nothing revelationary, but something quite, I guess refinement is probably the best way of describing it. It's not going to change the way the whole thing is, but it will definitely improve the cars in a number of areas that will mean that they should feel a lot more intuitive and a lot more natural. And a lot of that comes from the aero stuff that we learned from Pikes Peak, but a lot of it also comes from the tyre stuff that we've learned from Rallycross and the roll centre stuff that we've learned from the Rallycross teams. And all of this stuff brought together will have an amazing effect on the overall feel of all the cars within the game.
Cool. It's looking like the Fiesta on Liddon is the fan favourite. Let's use Andreas's car, which is number 2, I think.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep, that one, yep. Okay, cool. So, obviously with the Rallycross update, we've got 2 circuits in this, Lydden Hill and Holgess. We haven't really spoke anything about Hell, which is going to be our 3rd circuit that makes up the Rallycross update. What can you tell us about that?
So yeah, where you've got Lydden, which is fast and flowing and quite a simple circuit layout, and then you've got Holgess, which is quite technical, lots of crests and jumps and velodrome corners. I think it's fair to say that Hell is this really perfect blend between the two. So you've got some fast and flowing sections, and then you've got some quite tight technical corners. There's a lot of elevation changes, quite similar to Lydden in that respect. So you're going from high to low, where in Holgess it's kind of in a bowl and you're kind of going up and down, but you're kind of staying at the same level. But yeah, it's kind of the perfect blend between these 2 tracks. And yeah, it should offer players, again, it's not really offering them anything dramatically new, but it's offering them this fusion between the 2 driving styles that you'll be using on Lydden and on Holgess.
So just, I've seen it at the start of the last lap, but it's just behind us now at the moment. There's the Orange Fiesta, which is one that probably people haven't seen necessarily too much of in the real world. But why is that such an important car to not just to the game, but obviously to World Rallycross as a whole? Yeah,
so World Rallycross have a charity that they've backed, and it's called Drive for Life. I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce it in Norwegian, which is where the charity is based. But it's essentially a charity that looks after kids and make sure that they get to do great activities that encourage them to get involved in stuff and have a passion for stuff rather than going off and getting led. Yeah, playing video games.
They end up making video games.
But so the car hasn't been seen yet. Well, some guys will know it as being a livery that's on a Focus. I first ride along in a Skoda Fabia, I think it was, and I was actually being driven around by the CEO of Drive for Life, and so you know we're representing this charity in the game with this livery, and there's actually another version of it which is more predominantly black with orange highlights on it, which is kind of like the sort of colour negative of the orange one that you'll have seen in the trailer video. But yeah, I think it's a cool thing that World RX are doing this with their sort of chosen charity idea, and you know, Drive for Life has been part of Rallycross for 3 years now, and so yeah, for us it's not a huge ask to put that livery into the game, and so we were delighted to do a couple of liveries for that charity, so that that they can get those kids seeing their charity in a video game, which is kind of aspirational for them, I guess.
Mr. Robson's lost the back wheel.
Yeah.
You haven't made a hash of that. This was it. This was the grand finale of the live stream, and you're going around with 3 tyres. So yeah, I guess that's sort of wrapping up the live stream now. I can't believe we've been on for an hour. Thank you very much to everybody that's tuned in. If you're interested in Dirt Game, if you're, I suppose, kind of new to this all, if you visit dirtgame.com, all of the info for everything we've done previously and that is coming in the future is all on there. You can check us out on Steam if you just go to store.steampowered.com. Just type in Dirt Rally into the search box. The store page will pop up there, where more importantly you can buy Dirt Rally and join us for early access. You have really made a hash of that last lap. Well done. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter, twitter.com/dirtgame, facebook.com/dirtgame. Everywhere is /dirtgame. Points for a stylish finish though. You could put it into a replay so we can relive that. So yeah, thank you very much to everybody for watching. We'll be back in a couple of weeks.